Hello and good day, Mike Adcock here with your worldwide tropical outlook for the 24th of July 2013. Still have our two disturbances in the Pacific, 98W and 98E, but most of my attention will be focused on Tropical Depression 04 in the eastern Atlantic. At 9Z, this depression was located about 500 kilometers southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. 30 knots, gusting up to 40 for your winds, moving off to the west-northwest at 17, and our pressure is 1,008 hectopascal. No watches or warnings at this time as it's well out in the Atlantic. Do want to point out, though, on our MSI, take a look at all the stratocumulus out ahead of this depression. A lot more stable air for this to battle over the next few days. Here's the National Weather Service analysis. The depression is embedded within the intertropical convergence zone. It is expected to pull apart over the next few days as the system moves to the west-northwest. From there, let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center forecast. There's that track off to the west-northwest. Do want to point out the Leeward Islands, getting over toward the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. You are in the cone, at least for the end of the weekend and moving into early next week. Still plenty of time, but it is worth watching over the next few days. And you notice this, it is listed as a tropical storm throughout the entire period, expecting that to be upgraded later on today if the current trends hold up. Here's our Fleet Weather Center Norfolk forecast. This is the National Hurricane Center forecast, just presenting the wind radii that they are forecasting. You'll notice much of the winds just confined to the northern part of the system. I do have the forecast up here in the upper left, or upper right rather. Some slight intensification, getting up to about 40 knots, and then National Hurricane Center holds it steady for the remainder of the period, and a lot of that is based on a low confidence forecast. Speaking of confidence, let's take a look at the models. Here's our tracks. Again, pretty much like what we were talking about yesterday, west-northwesterly. This may be a little bit further south, and that could be because we're actually running these models on a tropical cyclone versus a wave yesterday. The models are in pretty good agreement. The challenge is, if you look over here to the west, you got a lot of tags for 120 hours. Then you come over here and you see some more tags for 120 hours. The question is how fast this system will move. National Hurricane Center is actually putting their hat with the GFS and the Euro, and that's just because we're currently the system's moving at 17 knots. You're talking the central Atlantic. It's a very weak system, so pretty much like what we dealt with Chantal earlier this month. System's going to be booking. GFS and Euro has a better track. They're more reliable, so seems more reasonable anyway for them to go with those with the faster westward motion. The intensity models still split up. You've got the camp that expects continued intensification throughout the period, and then you have the group that's quite a bit weaker, or actually some weakening. And what we're dealing with there, if you remember back to the satellite image, the stratocumulus out ahead of it, you do have some more stable conditions, slightly cooler waters, drier air. That's going to start affecting the depression in the short term. Once we get to days 4 and 5, as the system gets closer to the islands, then those conditions start to improve, but we trade off for increasing shear with some upper level troughing. So it seems reasonable that they would keep, bring it up to 40, hold it off, but understanding, if the conditions aren't as bad in the short term, that will help strengthen. If the trough weakens in the long term, that would help promote strengthening. So a lot in stake with this forecast. Look at Dvorak. The latest was 1.5 and that's a data T, final T, met pattern, the whole works. That's based off of 2/10 banding and no longer being sheared. ADT just got turned on, 1.8 for the final T, even 2 on the current intensity. But like I said, just been turned on. Matter of fact, only have an hour worth of trend data. But for what it's worth, it does support 30 knots and 1,012 for pressure. Here's our sea surface temperatures. Like I mentioned, some slightly cooler temperatures out ahead of it, right on that borderline of the 28 degrees Celsius mark. But then, as you get off in the western Atlantic, a lot, some warmer water, so really shouldn't be an issue, at least in the longer term. For upper air analysis, again, looking at the water vapor shot, a lot of dry air out ahead of it, so that's something that is going to battle. As you start to pull away from the anticyclone, toward the end of the forecast period, you start getting the shear on the southern periphery of these upper level lows. That's going to be the challenge. As a matter of fact, looking at the shear analysis, the cyclone's just off the page here to the east, but right now under fair conditions, 5 to 10 knots. As it continues moving west-northwest, shear increases, and you're looking at 40 to 50 knots by the time it approaches the Leeward Islands. So definitely going to be a challenge for this to strengthen. But then again, this is still July. We really don't get these Cape Verde type systems this early on. Speaking of Cape Verde, here's current conditions out of the islands. Improving now that the system is moving out. Currently 28 degrees Celsius, 82 for those playing the Fahrenheit game. Mostly cloudy skies, and just again improving conditions there. Do have some isolated showers in the forecast though this afternoon. System is still way out in the Atlantic, so reconnaissance has not been tasked to provide any surveillance for the depression. And that should remain so for a couple more days until we get a little further westward. For our disturbances, real quick, 98W, this is about 455 kilometers southwest of Hong Kong. It's been moving north. Still really no change in this from the past few days. Just looking at showers and thunderstorms, some potential flooding or continued flooding for portions of northern Laos, Vietnam, and southern China. We'll continue to watch this, but really not expecting any further development from this system. And then moving over to the eastern Pacific, 98E, about 1,400 kilometers rather from southwest of Baja California. 25 knots with this. National Hurricane Center is still calling it 30%. Conditions should start improving over the next couple of days, and that would help get it to intensify. Do see some convection help really starting to blow up now in the last few frames here, starting to get its act together, and actually comparing it to what we were yesterday, better looking. It's still got a long way to go. I mean, circulation is very poorly defined, elongated. Our banding, it's broken up. Bumming 2/10 banding, that gives us a data T of 1, so it is an improvement. It's just still very, very weak. For track guidance, again, no change out of the west-northwest and affecting nothing other than shipping interests. And for the intensity forecast, again, slight intensification, not really expecting hurricane strength. A couple of the models barely flip it over, but not really expecting that. Flossie is the next name in the Eastern Basin. And that pretty much concludes our roundup for today. Of course, get this and other Western Pacific analysis over at westernpacificweather.com or follow along on Twitter and Facebook. Of course, you can join in the discussion for tropics around the world, especially we've got a lot of threads going right now for Tropical Depression 4. That's over at storm2k.org. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Senior Pepper to get the latest updates in between videos. Again, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day and take care.